These stories scared me as a kid. You know, I still get goosebumps today. To the Outer Limits on Sci-Fi Buzz next. This week, the Sci-Fi Buzz wagon picks up hot comic writer Chris Claremont and his deadliest of the species. Flintstone special effects. And we revisit one of TV's scariest shows, The Outer Limits. And we are smoking here on Sci-Fi Buzz. Welcome to Sci-Fi Central, everybody. I'm Mike Jarek. Now, if you thought The Mask with Jim Carrey and Wolf with Jack Nicholson were going to be the hottest sci-fi movies of the year, check this out. Look what I've punched up. Coming this Thanksgiving, the $55 million Stargate. This effects-laden film starts in ancient Egypt and then zooms light years to an alien world ruled by Ra. Jay Davidson from The Crying Game plays the alien ruler. I don't know how many inches are on that ruler. And Kurt Russell is, what else? The hero. That's called Stargate. Whoa, wait a minute, come over here. Hey, come back over here just real quick. How about this? Jim Carrey, who I was talking about in The Mask, will play the Riddler, not Robin Williams in Batman 3. I like that choice, though. And Tommy Lee Jones has signed on as Two-Face. That's interesting. You know, of course, that Tim Burton will not be directing Batman 3, so it might be a little brighter and less quirky this time around. Remember the first one, Batman 1, that was shot in London, then 2 was in L.A., and now number 3 in Gotham, in New York City. Gotham in Gotham City. Well, enough about the future. Let's get into the Sci-Fi Buzz time capsule, you might say. Let's go back in time for a great classic, The Outer Limits. It has been called the best science fiction TV series ever. But The Outer Limits lasted only a season and a half during its original network run back in the early 60s. However, the series has stood the passage of time with its continuing popularity in syndication and home video.
Human beings kill. Oh, aren't you convinced of my guilt?
What difference does that make? The guy that pulls a switch in a death house doesn't have to be convinced of anything. I am not an executioner!
The Outer Limits strive to be more intelligent than other science fiction TV series before it. While heavy on monsters, the show depicted them as fully dimensional, with human-like thoughts and emotions. The stories were thought-provoking. Most often credited for the show's high standards is Joseph Stefano, who produced The Outer Limits, its first season, and wrote 14 episodes.
I wrote some shows that were really disguised criticisms of the CIA, of the Eisenhower administration that had come before it. I really was very annoyed with a lot of things that were happening.
Not only did Stefano use the show to make veiled political statements, it also provided him with a vent for his most disturbing, most repressed anxieties.
It really detonated whatever was going on inside you, and I was in analysis at the time, so you'll see a lot of my analysis in The Outer Limits.
You want to die. Unconsciously, of course. Don't let those unconscious drives win out, Dix.
Creating a new episode every 6 days was backbreaking work. Stefano put in 20-hour days, often writing in the car as he was driven to his office.
I couldn't find writers who could go home over the weekend and rewrite a script entirely, so I did it. And sometimes I would simply rewrite what had been given to me and not put my name on it or anything. And other times I would just write a new story. Some of the best Outer Limits that I wrote are, 48-hour scripts.
In spite of all of Stefano's hard work to make the series sophisticated and imaginative, the network viewed it as primarily a monster show.
They let it be known that that's what they were buying. And that we had better not go arty on them, And the word kind of passed around, and I began to, let's say that people made me understand that they weren't going to like it if we didn't have a monster.
The network censors and bean counters hounded Stefano. But the ultimate blunder was ABC's rescheduling the series opposite the hugely popular Jackie Gleason show. That killed The Outer Limits. But Joseph Stefano has gotten the last laugh on the Suits with the enduring popularity of his series.
This is what is so wonderful about The Outer Limits and why I feel that it's the most meaningful thing that I was ever involved with, in that I got to communicate with people, and I'm still communicating with them.
From X-Men to the Aliens Predator series, Chris Claremont is hot. And some prehistoric special effects next.
You are a talented man, Mike Jarek.
Thank you, Susan. You know, this Chris Claremont, I love his work. That's why I'm trying to duplicate it here.
You know, he's a really smart guy. We talked to him recently and learned a lot about the comic book industry. You know, the guys who created Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, they don't own the rights to any of those characters. They're owned by the big, giant comic book companies.
Boy, all that money down the drain.
But Chris Claremont is going to change all that.
Though the name Chris Claremont might not be familiar to everyone, comic book readers know the name well. And many have enormous respect for the man who, for 17 years, was the force behind the Marvel comic book series X-Men. During his reign, over 100 million comics were sold, making him the top-selling comic book writer in the country.
It was a series that basically talked about prejudice and talked about the ways that people do not deal honorably with other people. And unfortunately, in today's world, it's a concept that has far more point than ever.
Though for the most part he was happy at Marvel, Claremont was considered just another employee. After all, he didn't own the rights to X-Men or its characters. So when his opinion about the direction of the series differed from his superiors, trouble soon followed.
I felt that as the person who had been writing the book, had been defining the book, who'd been instrumental in making it the keystone of the Marvel line and the best-selling comic in modern comics history, that I should have a substantial say in the direction the book should go in.
Claremont realized he had no alternative but to leave Marvel. But it didn't take long for new opportunities to present themselves. He's written 3 sci-fi novels, turned out a graphic Star Trek novel, with another one on the way, and has managed to keep his loyal comic book following happy as well.
It's a story of 3 people thrown together by circumstance, forced to work together, forced to build the bonds of companionship, if not friendship, and fight their way through to a hopefully cathartic and triumphant ending.
Claremont is writing a 12-issue project for Dark Horse Comics called Alien Predator, the deadliest of the species. And despite the He-Man sounding title, the comic's main characters are women.
Quite frankly, I find women, for the most part, far more interesting than men. They're more fun to present in a dramatic situation because most of the situations that a woman will find herself in, a woman character rather, in a story like Alien Predator or a standard comic book slugfest, are situations that you wouldn't normally expect to find a woman in.
When he cut his deal with Dark Horse, Claremont insisted on ownership rights to the character Ash Parnell. This allows him to use Ash in future projects, whether they're under the Dark Horse banner or not. Given this is an unusual arrangement in the comic book industry, it appears Claremont learned some valuable lessons during his tenure at Marvel.
This is a way of saying we each are sharing this pie. We each have a hand in the creation of the pie, because I have no means of getting my work to an audience without a publisher. The publisher has no means of making money without a creator to give them product.
Next up for Claremont is Sovereign 7, an ongoing comic book series with a new team of 7 superheroes. In an ironic twist, the project will be published by DC Comics, Marvel's chief rival. Claremont will retain full ownership of every single character he creates.
I think the wonderful thing is that now that DC has shown that they are prepared enthusiastically to be flexible in this, then they've opened the way for other people to take what I've established and perhaps improve on it and drag comics kicking and screaming into the real world of publishing.
This is Shoshana from the Bronx. I'm calling up for all fans of Anne McCaffrey for the latest and final installment of the Pern Chronicles. The book is titled The Chronicles of Pern, First Fall. It's a wonderful book. You should add it to your Dragon Riders collection.
Don't forget to call our Buzzboard line with your recommendations about your favorite books, video games, TV shows, computer software.
I have got to skiddly-doo-doo.
On September 30th, 1960, history was made on the boob tube. On that date, the first primetime animated sitcom premiered on network television. And it hasn't been off the air since. Given the phenomenal success of the Flintstones cartoon and Hollywood's ravenous appetite for proven product, it was inevitable the citizens of Bedrock would eventually make it to the big screen. But more than a few eyebrows were raised when it was announced a live action film was planned rather than an animated one.
Okay, Brother Flintstone, we need a strike to win. Can you do it?
Hey, is the Earth flat?
Director Drian Levant was given the massive responsibility of helming the $50 million project, in part because he's a huge fan of the TV series. His extensive pop culture collection contains nearly 200 pieces of Flintstones memorabilia.
I don't know, why are you a fan of anything? You like it, there's something that speaks to you in it. And I think what's always spoken to me about the Flintstones was when I first saw it, I was a very impressionable 8 years old, and I thought it was really cool that they dreamed up all these gizmos and these different cars and the creatures.
Levant was determined to recreate a fantastic prehistoric world that resembled the cartoon as closely as possible. Because it's a make-believe world, everything had to be built from scratch. So some of the most creative forces in the business were brought in and put to work. The Jim Henson Creature Shop was recruited to design 15 puppets to serve as the modern Stone Age gadgets.
The Dick the Bird has motors that work the beak, the tongue, the eyes, the muscles around the eyes, the skin around his beak that make him breathe, that make his wings move, that enable him to later walk and fly in front of you. And this is a puppet, folks. But they're so good they could put a sock on their hand and entertain you. And here they've elevated that form, and they bring inanimate objects to life, and they make you believe that they're alive. And I think that's the beauty of it.
All right, you. Say Aha!
Some of the puppets used in the film, like Dino and the Bronto crane, were extremely complicated to maneuver manually. So the effects wizards at Industrial Light and Magic were enlisted to help ease the burden. For instance, ILM created digital imagery that allowed Dino to run and jump around, movement difficult to accomplish with animatronic puppetry.
The Bronto crane is a big deal. I think it's probably the largest puppet ever made, stem to stern, 58 feet. And operated by 8 people inside with this huge hydraulic pulley system.
While puppets from the Henson shop were used for Bronto crane close-ups, ILM created a computer-generated full-motion Bronto for wide shots. Levant feels that this kind of teamwork and technical ingenuity provided the film with one of its brightest moments.
There's 2 seconds in the film that excite me more than anything, and that's just a moment where Fred slides off the dinosaur's tail and flies into his car.
After this disconnect, the strange death of Superman George Reeves. It was 35 years ago this very week that an actor by the name of George Reeves died of an apparent suicide in Beverly Hills, California. That was shocking news to millions of TV viewers because they knew George Reeves as Superman. In fact, I still think he's the best known Superman even today. Well, we talked with some of his friends and co-actors who say George Reeves definitely did not kill himself.
No, I don't believe it.
You will, Blinky, you will.
On June 16, 1959, fans of the adventures of Superman got a shock they'll never forget. George Reeves, the star of the series, was found dead of a gunshot wound to the head. The death was ruled a suicide. But before Reeves had been buried, suspicions were already stirring. Jack Larson and Noel Neal, who played Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane on the series, are among the many friends of Reeves who wonder if the actor was murdered.
I had believed that he committed suicide, but then there's controversy and about it, and I could believe anything. I don't know.
In Hollywood, Reeves' death is one of the more controversial. What has raised most suspicion is the evidence from the death scene. Reeves was found in a bedroom of his Beverly Hills home with a pistol next to his body.
I saw with my own eyes in the bedroom upstairs where he died, there were 3 bullet holes. And that's the main thing that's a controversy in my mind. It only takes 1 bullet.
Adding to suspicion was the fact that Reeves had been in good spirits in the days preceding his death. He was planning to get married that very week, and his career was on an upswing. After a 2-year hiatus, Superman was going back into production for 26 episodes.
George, from what we were told, was going to do a short, not a cheapy movie, but a 2-week movie, during the summer months, which he was looking forward to, and maybe getting married. And then we were to start in September to do 26 more.
Well, all you have to do is just put away part of your allowance or your odd job money and put it in United States savings stamps at school.
The official story was that Reeves had become suicidal because he was typecast as Superman and couldn't get other parts. His co-workers confirmed that typecasting was a serious issue for Reeves.
George was certainly very depressed that he was typed as Superman, and I believe wouldn't have worked. He was trying to direct.
Yeah, he was going to do quite a few of the new ones.
Friends say Reeves was enthusiastic about directing the new episodes and happy to be acting again after a 2-year career slump. So why kill himself? And if he didn't, who did? The most popular theory is that a romantic entanglement had gotten George into trouble. The actor was a ladies' man who, it is said, sometimes overstepped the boundaries of social propriety.
He had martial arts skills. I guess he needed them.
Right. Not for the show.
With his romances.
Yes.
Reeves had had a long-term affair with the wife of a top Hollywood producer, but he had jilted her when he met his fiancée. 2 months before his death, Reeves had gone to the DA to report harassment by an anonymous phone caller whom he believed to be his jilted lover. Some people speculate that she had Reeves murdered. There are, of course, other theories, but it's doubtful we'll ever know for sure what happened to the most beloved and most tragic Superman of all time.
This is Theo Williams calling from Everett, Washington. And my recommendation is a book called The Dream Machines, an illustrated history of the spaceship in art, science, and literature. It's by astronomical artist Ron Miller, and it's formidable looking and one of the best histories of its kind that I've ever seen.
Sci-Fi Best Bets are next when we reconnect the buzz. You're up for some fun in the sun, and for many of you, that means the search for summer reading has begun. Well, we've got a few terrific tips for you on this week's Buzz Best Bets. Doubleday has just released a memoir by the late literary lion Isaac Asimov. One of the most prolific science fiction writers of all time, Asimov brought respect to a genre that had long been considered substandard by the rest of the publishing world. The book takes readers on an enlightening 20th century journey as Asimov recounts a career that spanned over 50 years. Though he died in 1992 at the age of 72, the author left a legacy of over 450 novels, as well as countless articles and short stories. I, Asimov, a memoir, is in bookstores now. Isaac Asimov is to the science fiction novel what the late great Gene Roddenberry is to science fiction TV. Hailed by those who knew him well as the great bird of the galaxy, Roddenberry's life is currently chronicled in not one, but two biographies. The first book, Gene Roddenberry, The Myth and the Man Behind Star Trek, is by entertainment journalist Joel Engel. Dozens of people who worked with Roddenberry, from Leonard Nimoy, star of the original series, to Rick Berman, overseer of the Star Trek sequels, offer their remembrances. Though Roddenberry died before he could write a memoir of his own, the second biography about his life, Star Trek Creator, was written by a friend. Roddenberry handpicked David Alexander to write the book, and the introduction is by his widow, Majel Barrett Roddenberry. So for those anxious to get their noses into anything that says Star Trek, this duo of bios will keep those pages turning all summer long. Those are this week's Buzz Best Bets. Come on over here. I've tapped into the Sci-Fi Channel's story files for FTL Newsfeed. This is good. Oh, this stuff on the Rilo aliens is really good. But if I tell you the plot, they'll throw me off the air here, so I can't do that. Just check out FTL Newsfeed every day right here in the Sci-Fi Channel. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And you won't be disappointed with next week's Sci-Fi Buzz. Great show for you. You know Fangoria's Weekend of Horror? We went there. We'll show you what it was like. Also an interview with Douglas Trumbull. And we'll have a retrospective, a very special one on Vincent Price. Harlan will be here with a commentary, and we'll check out the new Disney animated film, Lion King. A good show for you. Now, before we go, I just want to say something personal to this female fan who keeps calling the buzzboard line. Here's your answer. Boxers. And I will wear the cape, yes. No. We'll see you next week.
Max von Sydow, Romy Schneider, Harry Dean Stanton, and Harvey Keitel star in a futuristic sci-fi classic of corruption, destruction, and manipulation. Death Watch, Saturday at 8 p.m., 5 Pacific. Now stay tuned for Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion. Next.